because rather than really just looking at one cell phone tower, it's really geolocating the data for multiple cell phone towers, which does give a more accurate location of someone. However, it's very, very new.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. How do you search for a car? If someone was looking for you, only they didn't know who you were, just what car you drove, could they find you? Well, yes, by finding your car. And so, where must your car go from time to time? Which routes do you have to drive to get anywhere? And where are you likeliest to be seen? On what side of a town or city? In the Idaho student murders case, it feels like Ali are searching for a vehicle in order to find their man, in order to find the killer, rather than the other way around, which is in itself worrying, isn't it? If more than 30 days in, they can link a vehicle to the scene, well, that's better than nothing, but that does seem to show they don't have a suspect. They may have DNA, and if they can track down the owner and check his DNA and get a bingo, well, that would arguably be case solved. Okay, so how is searching for a vehicle different to searching for a person? Is it easier or more difficult? Well, we're about to find out in this case. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you have subscribed, welcome to the True Crime Rocket Science community. Please like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So, unlike human beings, vehicles are limited to moving only along traffic arteries, sort of largely straight lines, right? Kind of on a grid pattern. And these arteries tell us which direction a vehicle is going and may hint at a destination, even an ultimate destination. These patterns also tell us where home might be, work might be, and so on. This is good news in terms of where to begin in terms of a particular fabric. Where do you begin looking? Because highways and byways are fitted with sensors all over the place. The question is, beyond the camera that picked up a white vehicle on day one, the one in Linda Lane, and the camera that we discovered picked up a similar vehicle 30 days later. Of course, it picked that vehicle up on day 0, but we only realized the camera had picked it up a month later. Besides these cameras, what else is there to go on? Well, we can use true crime intertextuality, a idiosyncratic true crime rocket science tool. I typically just refer to it as intertextuality, to see how Ali have successfully or unsuccessfully tried to find vehicles in the past. And so let's look at some recent high-profile cases. First of all, Kylie Rodney. Probably the toughest assignment for locating a vehicle is if it's submerged in water. Not only is it invisible, because it's stationary, it's never going to be seen unless the water around it simply drains sufficiently to expose it, or if someone dives down to where it is and finds it. In the Kylie Rodney case, if there wasn't a diver, it's possible CCTV could have solved the case. CCTV alone. Firstly, CCTV proving the vehicle never entered back into the fabric of Truckee, passing along cameras on its way home, on the way that it would have had to have taken to get home. And secondly, fire watch cameras, fire tower cameras. All they had to do is watch for unusual movements of lights very late at night in a mostly dark area. And that's what happens. How much of that applies here? It was dark, looking for lights at a particular time. Interestingly, in the Kylie Rodney case, the mainstream media, which covered the case in depth, never acknowledged the fire cam footage. It's an area, I think, where social media ended up knowing more than the mainstream media, and how that story was ultimately resolved. And now let's move on to Vicky White. Vicky White was a corrections officer who helped an inmate escape, and that whole story started and ended with CCTV. It also started and ended in a vehicle, although the vehicle at the beginning, middle, and end were different. Where do vehicles hang out? Well, besides highways and roads, they hang out in parking lots and car washes. And when there are criminals in the story, car lots and second-hand dealerships. During the manhunt for Casey and Vicky White, covered in detail by this channel, so if you're interested in that, just look at the playlists and you'll see it over there. Casey and Vicky were fugitives by car for about 2 weeks. Their pattern was to buy a vehicle, ditch it, buy another vehicle, repeat. It may seem like a clever strategy, but it didn't take long to catch up to them. Why? Because each successive bingo indicated in which direction they were headed. So what do? Stay put and allow Ali to catch up to you, because there's a manhunt going on and it's a high-profile case and you're in the media and your picture is out there. Do you stay put and allow law enforcement to catch up to you, or do you move out into the open and risk being seen? When Vicky and Casey did finally break cover from their hideout hotel, this happened. That brings us to Chris Watts. GPS data basically proved Chris Watts disposed of his family. That's GPS data from his vehicle, and thus committed the murders as well. His work vehicle was fitted with a system that showed exactly where and when he was anywhere. Watts thought he could hide the disposal within the movements of an average workday. It was the, well, I was on the way to work defense. Well, it didn't work. Interestingly, on his way back to the crime scene, Watts quickly stopped near a dumpster around the corner from his home. This maneuver wasn't only captured by the onboard telematics, but by a residential camera as well. There was also an overlap between the movements of that vehicle on his own driveway and a neighboring camera from Nathaniel Trinastich looking over sort of some trees at the vehicle parked on the driveway envelope. And if you match those times together, you were able to actually, if you look carefully, you were able to actually see something. That brings us to Barry Morphew. When Morphew was investigated, the sheer detail involved in gathering telematics was actually staggering. Besides tracking his vehicle via roadside CCTV, the telematics recorded each and every time the vehicle stopped and started, and when the door opened and closed. Are we going to get anything like that in this case? Well, it's actually doubtful, and I'll explain why. Finally, let's deal with the Patrick Frazee case. The more cases you cover, the more you realize it's not only cell phone evidence that's virtually essential to tracking a perpetrator's thoughts, movements, and dynamics, but also their vehicle. Think about yourself in terms of your phone and vehicle and what that says about you. Where do vehicles have to go no matter what? Well, a gas station, right? So gas stations are really good places to try and get this sort of detail. Where do people have to go? Well, to supermarket or mall parking lots, right, in a particular fabric of their hometown. Frazee, a country bumpkin, underestimated just how intelligent a digital layer can be, even in a fairly sort of remote part of the country, even in a smallish rancher town in Colorado. So he was captured by a roadside CCTV, an ATM camera, at a Conoco gas station, inside a mall, a neighbor's CCTV, and that is all besides the cell phone evidence showing his handset and the victims and a third parties all moving in a coordinated fashion during a critical period very close to Thanksgiving when the murder took place. So in this case, what can we expect to find beyond the CCTV bingos? First, I think one has to exhaust those possibilities. You've really got to go through all of that CCTV with a fine-tooth comb. In the Gabby Petito case, law enforcement also released CCTV of the couple moments before Gabby disappeared. This footage took much of the true crime community by surprise. I think law enforcement had it all along, don't you? But the point is, that footage is out there, all over the place. One has to act fast, move fast, and communicate often and effectively to get hold of it. So in this case, what can we expect in terms of investigating that white Hyundai beyond CCTV? Beyond CCTV. Well, in the same way a human being's cell phone is almost an invisible umbilical cord connecting us to a digital device and vice versa. Wherever a person goes, a phone goes, kind of thing. When it comes to a vehicle, they also have the equivalent of a cell phone in terms of their onboard computer. This might be telematics. You can look for a vehicle's digital footprints these days just as you can for its owner. And besides that, vehicles are tethered to particular devices these days and vice versa. Hyundai's version of OnStar or Northstar is called BlueLink. The trouble is Hyundai only installed BlueLink in its Elantras from 2014 onwards. So you have to cross that option off your list. And so if you do that, what are you left with? Well, let's see. Number one, going through the 22,000 registered Hyundais may lead to an actual person or physical address. So just doing that could lead to your perpetrator or the person you're looking for. Number two, bear in mind, just as there is a killer on the loose in Moscow, since no one has put up their hands to say, hey, I drive a Hyundai and I was driving one that night and I was in the area and I was there between 3 and 4. Well, the white Hyundai is technically a fugitive as well. I don't think the owner will drown it. Perhaps like Caitlin Armstrong and Vicky White, he'll try to sell it. Perhaps he stays put or makes a move. If he makes a move, whichever he does, he's in trouble. Law enforcement are closing in, and making a move risks being seen in public. Number three, cell phone evidence may help find the perpetrator too. That's why I played that clip at the beginning of this episode. What law enforcement can do is cross-reference pings from the tower that deals or serves the 1122 King Road area with other pings and also the pings at the exact moment left by the vehicle, by the white car, first of all passing in front of Linda Lane close to 3 a.m. and the other white vehicle captured turning off the highway in front of the food mart in the east of the town. Is that using the same tower? Whether it is or not, that can be very useful, cross-referencing cell phone pings with the actual visual sightings from CCTV, as well as other sightings. Once you overlay cell phone data with CCTV, it becomes pretty clear and simple within the ether who was where and when. Then, through a process of elimination, you want to check these individuals to artifacts from the crime scene. In other words, you want to check these numbers, cell phone numbers, to people, to artifacts from the crime scene, DNA, access to the victims, dynamics and interactions with the victims, etc. And from that, you can easily put together, you can compile a list of who is more ensconced in the lives of the victims, who is at the top of that pyramid, and who should be prioritized. Some of the most recent news from law enforcement is that they've started to identify patterns in terms of their investigation. What do you think that means besides patterns within the digital ether? Do you see catching the perpetrator in this case feels like a matter of when, not if? And each day that goes by, we're getting closer to the finish line of this crime. So I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys again on Sunday. So until then, see you guys next time.